Hi, my name is Sean Mabry. I'm a writer, and today I wanted to talk about endings. Now, I started to talk about this a little bit at the end of one of my previous videos, a couple videos back, and today I wanted to really dive deeply into this because there are three main reasons why writing endings is one of the most important things you can do to develop your craft as a writer. I consider it non-optional if you're serious about writing. You can write a million partially complete stories. You can write a million great ideas down on paper. But until you can create a narrative that has an end of any kind, even if it's kind of an experimental end, just something that is the last thing you intend for the reader to walk away with, that's where you're really going to explore your full talent. It's where you're going to develop your greatest skill. And this is why. The first reason is just very practical. Pretty much any skill, and writing is a skill like anything else, any skill gets better faster when you complete whole projects. Dabbling doesn't help very much. It's finishing something, handing it off to someone else to get their honest feedback, and then incorporating that, maybe doing a couple more revisions based on that feedback, but ultimately finishing it, putting it aside, saying this is done. And of course you can always sell it or share it or do whatever you want after that point, but there has to be a point where you stop working at it and you move on to the next project and you apply what you learned from that project onto all of your future projects. That applies to music, that applies to carpentry, that applies to anything, any kind of skill, and it certainly applies to writing. The second reason has to do with human psychology, because there is a heuristic, a principle in human psychology known as the peak-end rule. And the way this works is that for any given experience we live through, the two things we are most likely to remember, the things that we commit to memory most seriously and most clearly, are the peak and the end. Now the end, that's pretty obvious, it's the end of the experience. The peak is the moment of most intense emotion in that experience. And it can be any kind of emotion. It can be the most intense joy, it can be the most intense anger, the most intense sadness. Whatever the emotion is, it just has to be the most intense moment in the experience. And the reason why this is so important to the craft of writing is that you ultimately do not control the peak. You don't. That's up to your readers. Obviously, it's part of the craft of storytelling to pick out certain scenes as important and to work on creating a strong emotional response for those scenes. But you really don't get to decide which of those scenes is going to be the peak. That comes down to your reader. That comes down to their own unique experience, the books they've read before, the media they've consumed before, what they do or don't notice, how closely they're paying attention. All these factors that you don't control, the reader controls, and that's part of the beauty of it. Endings, though, are absolutely within your control because it's the end of the story. You get to decide when the story ends, you get to decide how the story ends, who's still alive, who wins, who loses, all of that. So really take advantage of that. And understand that if you have a theme that you want to get across, or even just a particular feeling or tone that you want the reader to walk away with, the ending is where you do that. Obviously you're going to plug that in throughout the story as well, but if you can nail the ending, and it's funny actually because this kind of happened with one of my own short stories recently. I showed it to a friend and she said, it's a bit rough throughout, but the ending is amazing. And she ended up loving the story for that reason. But this is what I'm getting at. No matter what mistakes you make along the way, if you end strong, you basically have a strong story. People will remember it as a strong story. And that leads into the third and really most important reason, and this is especially true of the craft of storytelling, is that we love stories because they have endings. And I don't mean this in any kind of technical definition of a story has a beginning, middle, and end. That's true. But the reason why we love stories, the reason why we crave stories and tell stories wherever we go and seek out new stories wherever we go, is that stories have endings and life doesn't. stories, when they end, funnily enough, even if the author isn't conscious of it, even if they, don't really try to take advantage of the ending, and to be fair, there are great authors that don't try to master their endings. Neil Gaiman, I've heard admit several times that he's terrible at endings. They just kind of peter out. I don't think that they're terrible necessarily, but he doesn't plan them. That's really the point. And yet some of those stories have very powerful endings because the themes and the message still carry through in the ending, and it has an end. That's the most important thing. His stories do end, even if it's a petering out. And so the reason why that's so important, again, is that life doesn't have an end. Well, it has an end, but it's an end we don't like to think about, and it's an end that, one way or another, whatever your belief system is, takes you into a completely different mode of existence. So it's the endings and stories that really give us time to reflect and to think about things and to decide how we feel about what happened in that story, and by extension, how we feel about our own lives, about ourselves. Endings have that magic power. They let us do something that life very rarely lets us do. Life just keeps going. It's overwhelming, it's constant, there's no pause button, but stories do have endings. And there's so much we can do with a good ending. So please, 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 my fellow writers, finish things, finish anything. In fact, commit right now. Whatever you're working on now, promise me you'll finish it. You can even leave a comment below and I'll follow up with you later. Promise me you'll finish it, you'll get to an ending, even if it's not a good ending, right? Even if it's just a slapdash ending, that'll still give you the practice to write really stellar endings down the road. I hope you enjoyed this, hope you found this helpful. Please, as always, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.